that's for me, living life so merrily. It's so easy, can't you see? Polka, polka, that's for me. Polka, polka, everyone come along, it's lots of fun.
Welcome back, Miguel Dorati here with the Talk and Shoot podcast. I got my trusty sidekick, Mike Davis here. It is September 12th. It is the day after UFC 189, and we're going to hit you with a State of MMA podcast right now here. We're going to talk some shoot about UFC 189, the fallout, and everything. Mike, what you think? Did you see the pay-per-view?
Of course I saw this pay-per-view, and leading up into it, Miguel, we had discussed that even though they had lost, a key element of the main event, that it was certainly on paper a fight that is absolutely worth buying. And let me tell you something, man. That card last night lived up to the hype, and I believe it's due in part to the shortened ring. The ring is no longer 32 feet; it is now 25 feet, and it's really making these fighters press the action. There's not a lot of room to run anymore.
Yeah, I found it to be a good UFC as well. Let's get right into it first. Obviously, the huge news here is Conor McGregor has defeated Chad Mendes late in the second round.
That's crazy.
He is now the interim champion. I think this plays out big for the UFC. I think what this plays out to become is that Aldo obviously has to get better. Aldo obviously has to fight McGregor. And now with McGregor sort of solidifying his position with a quality win, obviously, the most legitimate knock on McGregor is that he hadn't beaten a top 5 guy, and now he has.
It's like you can sit here and you can say, well, Mendes had a few weeks to train, blah, 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 blah.
No, you got to give McGregor full credit.
You got to give him credit.
There's no way about it.
Look, I don't want to. You have to.
If Mendes were to say, well, I have short notice and stuff, and if I had a full training camp or whatever, that's not a good excuse. First, he's fallen short in title fights 3 times, and
well, 2 to the same guy though.
I understand. I'm gonna
credit. He almost won that last Aldo fight.
I'm going to give you my perspective on this. I think.
You call him a choke artist?
I don't know if that's the right word, but it happened in the Aldo fights too. Once he gets hit, he does not fight well hurt because he's been stopped in those types of situations. The first knee just dropped him, and in this one, he got hit once. And granted, you got to give McGregor credit for the precision, and he hits hard and whatever. But he dropped, and he turtled. And I don't know, it's just a hunch, but Frankie Edgar in that situation, he doesn't get stopped. And
he's throwing his feet up. He's trying to full guard.
You've got 2 or 3 seconds before the end of the round, and you're having to have a guy pulled off of you. I'm not saying Mendes quit but if he gets his bell rung with one shot, and now it's happened a couple of times, then it's time to look, because McGregor could have been forced to work more, and in the third round it would have been interesting if Mendes had absorbed a flurry where McGregor really had his first prolonged offense there for a few seconds and stuff, and had to come out for the third round. That's what I wanted to see. I'm not saying it was an early stop. I'm saying McGregor broke through, and Mendes, once he got hit, he collapsed.
I will tell you this. After that first exchange, the very first exchange, Mendes was breathing hard, and he was standing in front of a guy that he shouldn't have been doing that to. And it was either the body shots that got him, or it was an adrenaline dump. And a guy that's been in 2 world title fights, you would think, his body be acclimated to not experiencing that. But I think it was the latter. I think he had an adrenaline dump and he had nothing left, and he just could not recover.
Yeah, and to give McGregor credit, if anybody, with the circumstances around the fight and the build-up and stuff, could be credited, or you could say,
you gotta go with McGregor.
That
guy's a real deal. He's a real deal.
McGregor did not suffer any adrenaline dump. He didn't seem nervous, not one bit. He carried himself the exact same way that he did the whole time. Without appearing, nothing really fazed him. I thought that was pretty impressive. And the truth is a guy who was a critic of his, and I'm still, gonna reserve full judgment on him.
I'm in the same boat.
But this guy has so far done exactly what he said he was going to do. You know, and that's what makes it, really interesting. And now the UFC, to wrap around to the point that started this conversation was, and now the UFC gets Aldo McGregor. No doubt the fight when they meet will surpass what this fight would have been. If they fought now it's augmented even bigger. I see on the news that Dana White is calling for it to be in Las Vegas. And they're not officially on the schedule yet, but there's talk of them doing a show in Ireland sometime in the October time frame, I think.
Okay.
September might be too soon for McGregor to fight. I think he would fight again, but I think that they do need a few months to build up their title fights and stuff.
I agree.
I don't know when the Irish show is. McGregor's going to want to be on the Irish show. You know what? McGregor deserves to be on the Irish show. And if Aldo, which they only said it was a few weeks recovery on this rib thing, if Aldo can be ready for October, I would say that the fight should be in Ireland to really make it a transcendental event. I think doing it in Vegas is maybe a little boring. And the God's honest truth is the UFC putting Mendes in there. This is why the UFC does deserve credit at the end of the day. I think there's no doubt that McGregor keeps winning, that he's the cash cow that replaces Brock Lesnar and stuff, for the length of his run. He becomes the big star. He's already beyond Rousey and anybody, Sonnen, any of the big guys from recently. So they want him. They need that. And building him up would be fantastic. So now here's the situation is if Aldo beats him, that gets derailed a little bit. Now they're in a situation where they can actually see a window of opportunity where Aldo might not be champion. The bottom line is when they put Mendes in this fight with McGregor, they took a risk. They risked the whole McGregor train against the guy who was expected to give him a hard fight. So there's where the matchmakers deserve credit. And that gives McGregor even more credit for coming through that trial with flying colors.
I cannot disagree with a single word that just came out of your mouth. In fact, I will even take it a step further. Miguel, do you consider yourself an expert in the sport of mixed martial arts in terms of understanding?
I'd say that you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that's been around the sport from its inception to now as closely as I have. There are people, but just what I've seen, I don't pretend to be a genius or anything like that, but just what I've seen, I think I outpace a lot of people, including writers and press people from the modern era. So
okay, so yes, you're saying yes, and I also put myself in that category, and there's a number of people with being on the promotion side.
As an expert, I chafe a little at you putting yourself on my level. I'm just kidding, Mike. You deserve all the credit too, because we were there to see a lot of stuff and just the nuts and bolts of the way the sport works. I think you have to have lived some of that stuff. And,
our fundamental understanding is a little deeper than most people that are even, like you had mentioned in the press box. And there's a number of people that I consider fight experts in terms of stylists and matchups. And every single one of us, you included, thought Mendes was a heavy favorite walking into this fight.
I know that you were gung-ho on that completely, and when people start feeling this is I'll tell you my instinct. My instinct is when people I trust are forgetting what they know and they're telling me, and this one's a short thing, my antennas go up. And McGregor's calmness and coolness, and just the fact is I looked at it this way. It's like, this is McGregor's moment. Losing Aldo and replacing him with a legit guy like Mendes, he's going to have, if he could really win this fight, he is going to transcend into being the real deal. And I saw that as something that could happen. I thought Mendes, I did tell you, I think Edgar's the tougher fight of in the weight class, tougher than Mendes, and I think that's a fight that'll come for him if he gets by Aldo.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. And it's just, to me, that event last night, I mean, and then we're just focusing on the main event.
We're going to get into the semi-main event, too.
From beginning to end, was possibly the greatest UFC I have ever seen in my entire life. It was a spectacle.
Are you up on who got the bonuses yet?
I am not.
Okay.
I am not.
Neither am I, so we'll go right into... Let's go ahead and do this. Let's talk about the welterweight main event, because I thought Lawler, and I was on Lawler, even though McDonald was coming in as the favorite for the fight, but I thought Lawler fought an outstanding fight. I thought Lawler is a horse, man. I love that guy.
You know, did you see some of the quotes? God, I don't have it in front of me who said it, but there was a UFC fighter that said, "Yeah, but this new drug policy, Lawler's not going to be a champion for long." And it's going to be interesting to see what this new policy, who it shakes out, because there was 2 or 3 guys in that ring last night that appear to me that they might have some sort of performance-enhancing things happening.
Yeah, hey, let's get into that too, because it's going to be interesting, because somebody's going to get caught. Now we've got the results. Now we got to wait a few weeks or whatever, and we'll see if everybody comes through clean. Now in Nevada, where this fight took place, we'll come up with at least the knowledge that they were tested relatively well. Better than they would be in Missouri or anything like along those lines.
Yeah, and Gilbert Melendez recently failed his drug test.
I know, I saw that, and that's Giblert, by the way. Just please don't.
Well, until he fights again, it should be Giblert, because he's got no one to blame but himself.
Hey, I'll tell you this, just to touch on the uniforms and stuff like that, I got to tell you, it didn't really look, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I thought the uniform look was nice. I thought, it was a pretty complete package. I being an old fat guy, I'm going to take some UFC boxer briefs. I don't know, like you said, I don't know if the sleeveless neoprene shirt is for me anymore. But you know what I mean? I think the uniforms look nice. I got to say that. It
looks professional, Miguel. But how about like when boxing, where you got there's only 2 colors. There's black shorts and white shorts. And it's like, sometimes the guy's going to want gold. McGregor, I'm sure, would have wanted an Irish flag type short. When are they going to start expanding into those avenues?
I mean, hopefully Reebok steps it up and adds some creativity to diversify. I think when you put a corporation in, and the UFC has bought them in, sold to them the right to do this, you're going to lose some things, and you're going to lose a lot of that individuality. To me, I mean, there's some things that I think that do look stupid. Condom ads on your shorts are gonna make you look kind of B class. You know what I mean? I also wasn't a big fan of the a magic mark or some crap on your back.
Yeah.
But so I can see where the UFC is trying to do something a little bit better and classier, and I gotta say, for the first step, the show looked good. The uniforms look good. I know people are gonna want to take pot shots at it or find a reason to criticize it, but in the overall look, when the people came out for the weigh-ins, for the whole thing, I gotta say, I'm not gonna knock it right now. Hopefully the money goes up for the fighters, and hopefully Reebok makes enough money that next year, or in 6 years, it's not 6 years and $70 million. It'll be 6 years and $700 million. And, if that's the case, then nobody's going to be complaining about their bonuses.
No, I agree.
But let's get into this welterweight main event, because, like I said, Robbie Lawler,
Was that a show or what?
And you talked about it this way. People may be saying Lawler is maybe, a juicer or something like that. And, I don't know.
He didn't look as hard to me as he has in the past, though.
Look, he's a guy who's fought a lot of his career at 185. And, I know, steroids and stuff is not all about muscle building and being big and stuff like that. But I think at some point, if he ever dabbled in that sort of stuff or experimented, I think at some point he matured. He just seems to be a smart, or let's say well-grounded kind of athlete. And getting to 170 pounds, I don't know. I think his dedication might have been built around, maybe being clean. We'll see we'll see.
Did you hear his promo at the end? He cut a really good promo as well.
Yeah, I mean, Lawler.
Years of intense training, he got beat. He
Yeah.
stands in front of me, he gets knocked out.
Yep. I mean, the thing about Lawler is this is Lawler's time. That's one of the that really was the best explanation I could give you for why I felt he was a good underdog in this fight. And
Miguel, you put money on Lawler on that fight. Oh my God! I mean, you'd have a heart attack. I mean, it's.
No, it was definitely hard to, I mean, what kills is the parlay when you go with the two underdogs because, McGregor broke through and Mendes didn't. But here's the thing is Lawler is suited for this type of fight. If you look at the Hendricks fights, the close fights, I know he's 1-1 with Hendricks and we're probably going to be seeing them fight again next. But the close fights, I think, benefit Lawler and his style, and he knows how to manage it and how to look active in the judges. And McDonald gets mechanical and stuff. So though McDonald was doing damage with his kick, his front kicks and stuff like that, and his length, I just don't see McDonald being a smart fighter. He comes out and does the same thing over and over. He just doesn't make adjustments throughout the fight that are really noticeable or effective. And he let Lawler stay in this fight. He let Lawler off the hook. He let him stay in the fight.
Especially when he took those kicks. I agree. And I know, he had a broken nose probably in the first two exchanges in the first round. So he was kind of, gasping for air and trying to, keep his heart rate at a pace to where, he wouldn't gas out. But when you got Lawler wobbly, with about a minute and a half left, come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take that. You got to take that because
and that's one of the things out of TriStar that I've noticed a lot with the fighters that come out of there. When it comes time to pull the trigger, they generally don't.
St. Pierre and McDonald,
they're not the guy that doesn't.
They're not amazing finishers.
No,
you know what I mean?
No. It's just like they play patty cake. And then they get the upper hand, and it's like, okay, well now throw that hammer down. Go get yourself, as what you've heard Greg Jackson say, go get yourself some fans. And they don't. It's like, all right, well, I got him wounded in the second round. I'm just going to keep him, where he's at for the next 3 rounds so I get my hand raised for a decision. Finish a guy.
Yeah, McDonald, too. Let me put it this way. I used to do a show called MMA Oddsbreaker with Nick Kalikas, where Nick...
Absolutely. Brilliant guy.
Nick is one of the bookmakers that do the odds for the casinos and stuff like that. And he was big on Rory McDonald. I remember he was coming up. Have you seen Rory McDonald? This guy's going to be a champion. This guy's going to be a champion. So McDonald has had that hype for a long, long time. And I've never really been sold on him. And it's not for the physical aspect because the guy's a monster. But you touched upon it a little bit in another conversation we had. Did he look at the charisma that Lawler has? That calm, cool confidence of I'm a champion. I deserve to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
In his interview, after the weigh-ins, he said, "I'm going to knock this guy out." And just and then contrast that to
Robbie Lawler's defending his house from invaders.
And McDonald.
Do you see the difference between the two approaches? You got a wife and kid in your house. Anyone that comes through that door, you're willing to kill. That's Robbie Lawler.
And McDonald, I don't know if he doesn't have that fire or he doesn't show it the same way, but McDonald is a guy. Like I said, he's been given this protege label since very early in his career. And to me, a champion really has is a guy you look for the total package. And this guy just falls short in his interviews, in his charisma and stuff. And it's just
his interviews are horrible.
And I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. I don't want to say it, but he seems dumb. He seems dumb. And at some point, mental affinity. I'm not talking school book affinity and stuff like that, but there's something where this guy he's missing something. You know what I mean? I just like, the nicknames that this guy has chosen and changed. What the hell is going on in this guy's head? You know?
You know what, though? I'll tell you what. He won one of his fights. He wore like a 3-piece, like a 5-piece suit. We're going to forget a 3-piece. He wore this suit that probably cost him about probably about $5,000.
No. It costs Fertitta $5,000.
Okay. So he shows up. I got an event like a week later. Everyone's like, oh my God, he's got a suit on. Well, quickly that went out the window. But not only does he got a suit on, I get these douchebags showing up at my event dressed like that. Like members of the press. They say, it's very important to wear a suit to these events. Like, dude, you're sitting ringside. You're going to get splashed with blood. I don't even wear a tie at my events.
Yeah. No, I think in that respect that touches on McDonald, possibly being a guy like McGregor is a guy that, the UFC in public went out and said, look, here's a tailor. This guy's going to put a wardrobe together for you. I mean, when your tie matches your beard, right. Somebody is having some considerations about dressing you, And McGregor pulls it off, because he's got charisma, he's got presence. McDonald just looked like a
GQ model.
Yeah, like a dumb kid dressed up. You know what I mean? And I think that maybe they put him in there. But I think you're talking about a guy who's going to fall short on being a champion. I think he still has enough, obviously, to hang around and possibly be like a Junior Dos Santos, where he's going to be the number one contender for a while, possibly earn another shot, because at the end of the day, he's a specimen. But I think Lawler cleaned his tank. I think, he let Lawler off the hook. At the end of the fourth round, Lawler gave him a look like, all right, I'm probably behind on the cards. You ain't got much time left. And Lawler went out and did what McGregor did. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. He knocked him out. And again, one of the things unimpressive about Rory is when you're a dominant fighter, it's always interesting to see how your instincts are when you do get hurt. If it's always going your way, it's pretty cool to fight that way, without any adversity. And he's a dominant guy. He beat up Jake Ellenberger, didn't take a lot of damage and stuff. But when he gets hurt, he unravels. And he doesn't have an ability to adjust in game plans. And again, the guy, he used to call himself Ares, the god of war, since he was 19 years old. And that sounds like a nickname he gave himself, And then,
I do that too sometimes. Like I insist my 7-year-old daughter call me certain nicknames.
Yeah, and his new nickname is all of a sudden I notice is maybe he's had it for a while, but what the hell is the Red King? I can find I don't even understand.
It's
where
like some sort of like IPR ale.
If maybe that's what it is. If it's after a beer, I might think he's cool, But it's like if somebody came up to me and said my nickname is the Red King, I would be like, you're retarded. You know what I mean? And
remedial is the word they're using now.
I understand, but I mean, it just.
I'm with you on it.
And this is where I hate to say a guy's dumb because I don't know him, And if I knew him, I could tell you for sure.
Well, I heard the Red King, and I immediately thought of you because we've had this conversation about this guy's nicknames, and I like it when people call themselves like the whole show, or
ruthless. Robbie Lawler has been ruthless Robbie Lawler for like 15 years. And that's a nickname he didn't give himself in his room. Thinking about the time where everybody's been telling him he's going to be champion. But that's why I think the guy's a mental midget. So the guy, I don't know what world he lives on, but it doesn't translate in charisma that he's going to need. And if he's uncomfortable around those types of situations, all that baggage is what makes a difference, I think the interesting part is that it was McGregor, who wasn't a champion, and Lawler that carried themselves like champions this weekend by far and away.
I agree.
Over their opponents.
There was an error in the UFC broadcast. They always like to try to keep like little tidbits of information and interesting facts. One of the announcers, I don't think it was. He said that Robbie Lawler was the American Top Team's first world champion, and the first thing out of my mouth was, "What about Mike Brown?"
I don't know if Mike Brown held a UFC belt though.
Well, he didn't say UFC, but whenever they mention Miguel Torres, they call him world champion. when anyone that was a WEC champion, they referred to him as a world champion, especially when there's belts in weight classes that the UFC never had. Mike Brown is the first world champion that out of the American top team. I respect Robbie Lawler, but you also got to give due to Mike Brown.
Hey, I actually think Hermes Franca held the hook and shoot world championship prior to that. It's the truth, man.
Well,
and I'll tell you,
look on the registry, wherever he's at.
I'll tell you, when we were well sponsored, that he's probably, if Hermes still has that belt, that's a $5,000 belt he's got in his possession. It was a nice belt, but I understand what you mean. I think that in general, like you said, there's going to be a diminishing of the emphasis on the schools as they move in a different direction with their businesses and stuff. Let's go through the rest of the card. Who else impressed you?
It was fantastic. It really was a good card, man.
Who else impressed you?
Jeremy Stevens. What tainted his victory, though, was the fact that he missed weight.
Uh-huh.
He missed weight by a few pounds. But, watching that fight, I mean, every single fight, the Hatch versus Gunnar Nelson fight, every single fight that took place, you're like, oh, that's fight of the night. Oh, there's no way anyone's going to beat this fight. And it just continued. It was overwhelming on the amount of fights and the quality of which that we experienced at that UFC yesterday, and I felt spoiled.
Good. I enjoyed it too. I'm not ready to go that far with it, but there were some standout performances. I thought Nelson answered a lot of questions. It's been a little bit since he took his loss, and we've seen him.
Wait. You know what? I mean, not to digress too much, the judges had Robbie Lawler down 3-1 at the time of the KO.
Yeah, I think Lawler knew that too.
Do you think he lost the first round?
I especially in a fight of that magnitude, I'm really.
You're gonna give the first round to the challenger.
No, but I could see a draw round.
Yeah, that was kind of, they were still feeling each other out.
They're still feeling each other. Nobody put out a lot of energy. McDonald was a little more active, but I think he was already bloodied and stuff. So, I mean, they both kind of dinged each other, but they were still feeling each other out. And I think, I'd have to look at it again because I didn't look at it to score it again. But
I thought the fifth round was deciding the fight. Was deciding the fight, I should say.
That could very well be too. Now let's talk a little bit. But I thought Nelson was impressive because Gunnar Nelson, coming off a loss where he was the favorite, where he had been given a headline spot as an up and coming guy over in Stockholm. He took the loss, and it had been a while since we've seen him. Whereas Thatch had come in, taking a fight with Benson Henderson on short notice, and also taking a loss.
He carried himself well in that Henderson fight, though. I was pretty impressed by him.
I agree. And the thing I like to see there is he bounced back. He said, "Hey, get me another fight or whatever," and he's in this fight real fast. Nelson took his time. I guess you get the impression that maybe he was cautious or something like that. But he looked fantastic. He looked at every bit the protege that he was supposed to have been.
I don't think Thatch really was expecting. I think he was just expecting to defend a takedown and really wasn't looking for a 1-2 combination right down the middle.
Yep, I thought Brad Pickett's a soldier. Pickett fighting another.
God, was that an amazing fight? That was an amazing fight. Thomas Almeida.
Yeah, Almeida. I mean, he's 19-0 now. This is the next thing in the weight class at bantamweight. Look for this kid to move up here. And Pickett is, a long-time veteran, a soldier, coming into a tough fight against an up-and-coming hungry guy, and he gave it his all. And, unfortunately for Brad, he's probably nearing the end of his career, but he's a guy I would always have paid to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the bonuses right now. The fight of the night obviously went to Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald. The performance bonus went to Conor McGregor. Which, when a guy's headlining like that, I like to try to see a performance bonus. Fight of the night is one thing, but a performance bonus I kind of like to see, spread out along the guys.
I think it becomes a thing where, I mean, if depending on the criteria, but if it's attention and stuff like that, McGregor will always win it when he fights. I wouldn't even want to fight on the card with the guy.
The second performance bonus went to Thomas Almeida.
Yeah, and he deserves it. Now, the other thing that happened on this show is Cathal Pendred lost.
Oh my God, is he terrible? Is he awful?
I mean,
not only is he bad, he like he's got this amazing talent of like sucking the talent, sucking any virtue or fightability out of the guy next across from him.
He's the worst case scenario, I call him, because he's a guy who's tough. There's no doubt he's tough. He can take shots. He can take punishment. He tries what he tries, and to what I can see, it's a lot of clinching and stuff, and not a lot of activity. Here's the thing: is he's in good shape. He's a big guy. He's in good shape.
He can take a punch. He certainly can take a punch.
But he's a zero athlete. You know what I mean? He's in shape, and he can have stomach muscles all he wants and stuff. But he's slow and flat-footed, and everybody takes it to him. John Howard, who'd lost a bunch of fights in a row, finally broke through here and beat him up.
John Howard, however, had him finished with leg kicks and didn't thread the needle.
Yeah, I think, Howard's a guy that's been questioning himself. I think he's lost 3 in a row now, but he'd lost 3 in a row building up into this. He had come out with a little bit of hype. I think Uriah Hall was a guy that came out of the Ultimate Fighter TV show with a lot of hype, and when John Howard beat him, it was considered to be something where he might be, might be moving up in the division, but it didn't go right for him after that, and he was fighting for his job. Pendred was coming in off of 4 straight wins. John Howard with 3 losses in a row can't be considered like a huge step up in his competition. I think Cathal Pendred is right at the level that he belongs, which is, a couple more fights in the UFC, and hopefully we won't have to look at him again.
I'd say who really impressed me too, even in a loss, Tim Means.
Yeah, I think Matt Brown is tough, and I think Means looked good.
Matt Brown is just so crafty.
Yeah, the thing, what I was looking at in that fight was the difference in what they've been doing, And what I mean by that is, just take the last 3 years. If you look at it, and Brown's had a couple of losses, and the other guys had a winning streak and stuff like that, you can fool yourself into thinking, here's a couple of fighters on a different, maybe a different trajectory where, Means it's time. But Means had never fought anybody like a Matt Brown. You know what I mean? George Sullivan, there's nobody on his resume anywhere near Matt Brown. And if you look at what Matt Brown has been doing in all this time, Matt Brown's got fights with Robbie Lawler, Johnny Hendricks, He is
a scrappy guy that is impossible to finish. Like that guy, like you said, Mendes takes a punch, he turtles. A guy like Frankie Edgar, he's trying to figure it out. Matt Brown is dangerous even when you have your foot on his throat.
Yeah, I enjoy Matt Brown's fighting, and he's just been fighting at a higher level. He had a huge winning streak, snap with losses to Lawler and Hendricks, but you forget that he pushed both those guys the full limit,
yep.
and Means wasn't ready for somebody who'd been through that type of war.
He had him finished though a couple times during the fight. It's just I think he got caught with an elbow.
Yeah,
and he was wobbly and went for a single leg, and Matt Brown is vicious on the ground. Yeah,
no, that guillotine was he was tapping fast. Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna take anything away from him. I thought he put on a fantastic performance. I thought his inside striking was unbelievable. I think with a little maturity and a little time, Tim Means could actually be a top 5 fighter in that weight class.
I agree with you. I think Brown was a little too much of a step up, but I think
it was nice to see how he reacted to it, though.
Yeah, no, again, different than McDonald. I'm looking here that McDonald couldn't even answer what year it was after the fight in the short aftermath. So he got his bell rung.
That might have been. He probably would have had issues with that question prior to the fight. That's neither here nor there.
Oh, Mike, that's beautiful. Yeah. Anyway, the UFC's got a huge calendar coming up. They're real busy. They got fights tonight, which you'll hear this podcast after the Ultimate Fighter finale scheduled for Sunday. And on Wednesday, they're coming up with UFC Fight Night 71. So they're not slowing down on the schedule this week. Wednesday shows a little bit unusual for them, but they are going Wednesday here with Frank Mir and Todd Duffy as the main event, and then they follow it up.
Yeah, I'm not too interested in that.
There's a couple of interesting things on that card. You take a look at that card, and Holly Holm is on it. That to me is the main thing.
She was at my last event.
Oh, that's cool. Cool. Yeah, I mean, she's somebody there's a lot of high expectations. She had a split decision win over Raquel Pennington in her UFC debut that didn't leave anybody talking about a UFC title fight for her. So she's got some work to do. She's facing a girl who's tough at Marion Renault, who's been 2-0 in the UFC. I'm excited more about that fight than the Mir Duffy fight. And I think the co-main event of Thompson and Ferguson this Wednesday is a very good fight. Josh Thompson coming back after about a year off. If he's motivated, I think he's been one of the best in the world. Now he's a little older, we'll see. And Ferguson's been nothing, but awesome. She's joining the UFC roster.
Amazing bout. Like if you want to try to introduce somebody to the sport, Yves Edwards versus Josh Thompson is one of those fights that you just hit play and you watch the reaction as they see that thing play out.
Yeah, I agree. And it's still one of the best knockouts in UFC history. And just to wrap up here, on July 18th, by the end of next week, the UFC is back in Europe. They're playing Scotland. And the main event there is Talis Latis taking on Michael Bisping. And there are a couple of women fights on there and stuff. So we'll hit you with another State of MMA podcast after this week of the UFC shakes out. We'll check in with Bellator as they've got a show coming up here in the next week or so as well.
I'll tell you what, I watched a couple Bellators recently, and they have a guy named David Rickles, who I think has an incredibly bright future in the sport. He just needs a little maturing, a little polishing. David Rickles is quickly becoming one of my favorite fighters.
Okay, we'll talk about that when we get to Bellator. I've seen Rickles. I agree that Rickles brings excitement to his fights, and but he's gotten his chin tapped a couple of times, and he's looked bad. And
he's fun to watch.
In his last outing, when he came back, he had spent some time away from the sport and stuff. And I agree, if he's focused, he could be somebody who's interesting in that weight class. For Bellator. Anyway, let's wrap it up here. This is Miguel Dorati for Mike Davis on the Talk and Shoot podcast, and we have been Talk and Shoot about the UFC 180.